Thanks for joining us this morning. The NDP government has decided to put off a decision on ride-sharing, Uber and Lyft, companies like that coming into British Columbia, until next year. Their campaign promise in the recent provincial election campaign was to get it done by the end of 2017. That is now off the table. Joining me on the line is BC's Minister of Transportation, Claire Trevena, for more on this. Minister, good morning. Why the decision to kick this into 2018?
Good morning. The decision was made because we really need to work out how we're going to make sure that the taxi industry is working productively, safely and effectively across BC as soon as we can. And until we have done that, it really is not reasonable to be bringing in a whole new layer of services. We're very cognizant of the fact that people want to have options, want to have the opportunity to do app-based ride-hailing, but we want to make sure that what we have here is working well, that passenger safety is paramount, and that drivers can go about their business in the most productive and safe way.
Well, we've been hearing that from various levels of government for the last 4 or 5 years. You're hiring an industry expert to do the consultation, or do the consultation, Dan Harrer. He was hired by the City of Vancouver to produce a report, which he did in 2015. As I understand it, you have not read that report. Wouldn't that be a good place to start?
Well, obviously the report that Mr. Harrer did for the City of Vancouver is going to be part of this. He did the report. He's going to be using that as part of his basis. But we're looking at the whole province here. That report had no recommendations in it. It was looking at how to deal with the basic issues. I have glanced at it. I have not read it in detail, but it didn't come out with recommendations. So what we are asking Dr. Harrer to do is look at the industry across the province, see what is happening across the province, where we are dealing with 6 pieces of legislation, where we're dealing with municipalities across the province, and we're dealing with the Passenger Transportation Board. It's extremely complex.
But
the way the system works in BC.
As the minister, doesn't it make sense for you to read what has already been done? I mean, I know you would turn your nose up at this, but Peter Fassbender, there was a stakeholder engagement summary that was put together for the Liberals. We've got Mr. Harrer from 2015. Does Mr. Harrer have to tell you exactly what to do, or can't you deduce from his reports which way you think this should go?
Well, Dr. Harrer looked at Vancouver alone. I'm dealing with the whole province here. We've got to look at what's happening in Kelowna, what's happening in Prince George, what's happening in Victoria. It is a complex issue. The previous government consultation was described by the taxi industry as destructive. We want to be constructive. We want to make sure that we are putting forward ideas, plans that will work for everyone, that will work for those who are working in the taxi industry and have money invested in the taxi industry and have jobs there, as well as those who want to do the new style of app-based ride-hailing. So we need to do this from a basis of absolute understanding across the province, not just what's happening in Vancouver, but across the province.
Well, considering that the bulk of the taxi industry is based in Metro Vancouver, it would seem to me that you would be able to take what's done here, which where the biggest demand is, and apply that to other cities around the province. Sorry, I was going to say we'll leave that for now. Let's come back to the taxi business. Why is it that the NDP is so concerned about the taxi industry, an industry that I might point out that has dropped the ball in terms of service, in terms of the number of cars on the road, in terms of actually getting people around, to the extent that we have 200 or 300 people at the cruise ship terminal waiting an hour, 2 hours, sometimes 3 hours for a taxi cab in the middle of the afternoon? How do we have any kind of tourism industry with that going on?
Well, this is one of the things we want to deal with, and I just want to pick up on your previous point. Yes, Dr. Harrer looked at Vancouver, but we're talking about Surrey, we're talking about Richmond, we're talking about Burnaby, we're talking about the Lower Mainland as well as the rest of the province. So I think we need to broaden it out beyond just Vancouver, Vancouver being important though it is. But yes, we have to ensure that we have enough cars on the road. The previous government clearly dropped the ball on this. They had 5 years to deal with it. Uber first came into the province in 2012. So the previous government had 5 years. They left it till the very last minute to try and come up with a solution. We are looking at how to do it as quickly as we possibly can, putting passenger safety, driver safety, and public concern right at the forefront.
Well, the Vancouver Taxi Association, the BC Taxi Association, had 5 years to respond to it. It's as much the industry's fault that it's in the situation it's in as it is the government. I mean, the taxi industry is a cartel in this province, especially in Metro Vancouver, and they've had 5 years to know that Uber and Lyft and these other companies might be coming. And what have they done? What have they done to try to deal with the technological change? Zero, as far as I can tell.
Well, I'm not going to get into a blame game here. What we are looking at is the next step to make sure that we are dealing constructively and proactively to ensure that we have the business that is in place at the moment can continue to work and continue to provide service, and that we can look at how we can bring in a new service. If we don't understand and work with what we have at the moment, it's going to create greater confusion, greater problems, decrease passenger safety, make sure that it would undermine the safety on our roads. We have to be prudent and careful and make sure we're doing this properly. And
these ride-hailing services are in cities all around the world. I don't hear stories about great breaches of safety or big problems. Sure, like any business, there are problems, but you're approaching this like this is something that's just come out of completely out of left field or come from Mars. These people have been around. These businesses have been around for years now.
They have. They've just been kicked out of London, which is one of the biggest cities in the world. London, which has had for many years private, what's called Minicabs, which is private businesses running cab services, which you just call up and you get them, but they have kicked out Uber. So it is not running smoothly everywhere, and we want to make sure that in BC we get a system that works for BC. We've got to make sure that it is a safe system, that it is a productive system, and that meets the needs of BC, whether you're in Vancouver, whether you're in Prince George, whether you're in Kelowna.
Does this have anything to do with the sudden influx of donations from the Vancouver Taxi Association to the NDP in the last 4 or 5 months or so?
I think that is really I would say an absurd suggestion.
Really?
We are committed. We are committed.
Really? An absurd suggestion?
I would say that it is. We are looking at ensuring that the taxi system in BC, the ride-hailing system, people can have a safe travel anywhere where they are hiring a car to travel, whether it is maybe in a year's time, whether it is an Uber, whether it is now a yellow cab, whatever it is. My job as transportation minister is to make sure that people can travel from A to B as safely as possible, and that means doing it in a prudent way, which means approaching this with initially looking at what we're doing with the taxi industry, then looking at how we can amend the 6 pieces of legislation which we are confronted with, plus looking at what the Passenger Transportation Board does, plus looking at what municipalities around the province do before we can make those next steps.
Before I let you go, and I know you have to flee, how much is Dan Harrer being paid for this report that he's going to produce?
Within this current budget, there was $165,000 available.
Thank you for your time this morning. Claire Trevena, she is the Minister of